Hey, welcome to another episode of Violent Minds. My name's Mark Chauppetta, your resident private investigator, and joining me is
Keith Ablow, resident forensic psychiatrist. Your other half.
you said that in a way. You know how you said that?
How? What are you analyzing me?
Yeah, you said that like an answering machine when you get tricked. Keith Ablow. And then you start talking, and then it's like, please leave the message after the beep.
I had a pregnant pause.
You did.
Interesting. Yeah. I'll have to think about that. Fair enough. And thank you for analyzing every word I say, even the pauses.
Even the pauses. You know what I noticed from this show? I noticed that either I sit crooked or one of my shoulders is higher than the other. Like,
interesting. I know a very talented physical therapist who could help you.
You told me about that, but look at this is that's normal, but that's uncomfortable. So I must not have good posture.
Well, very few people do. And interestingly enough, there's a big connection between posture, which I'm still working on at 60 years old, and mood. You can literally affect someone's mood by teaching them good posture. Because of the feedback loops, right? If you put your shoulders down, down, shoulders down, there you go.
Yeah.
Do you not feel like more, I don't know, capable, more ready to take on the world?
I'm sticking my chest out like Superman.
But people don't see it that way. They see it as confidence. They see it as you being in command of yourself. So just proper posture, shoulders down. It extends your neck, by the way, so that you now look right. See, you just before when you collapse like that.
Yeah.
That's no way for a private investigator to look. You're
going up to people.
You can't go up to people like this and be like, hey, can I have your ID? No. Let's have the ID.
Right. And I'm not big in stature. It's funny when I was in the doctor's office the other day, just to follow up on the last podcast, I had hurt my knee. So I went to the doctor's the other day and I have a torn meniscus. Which I was told, I'm like, a torn meniscus? And the guy's like, the orthopedic doctor's like, well, we generally can't get you an MRI because every man on the planet over 40 has a torn meniscus.
True, but is yours causing symptoms? It is, or not?
Yeah, mine was torn pretty badly and is causing symptoms, and he fears there could be some MCL damage. So I was able to slide it through through insurance, but where was I going? Why did I even mention that? What did you say?
Well, we were talking posture, the body-mind connection.
Yeah.
And I don't know how that led you to talk about your torn meniscus, but
I don't know. I forget.
Yeah. But in any case, yeah. So her book, by the way, is called Stand Up to Depression. Good name, right? Because it's like, if you stand up, your mood is impacted as well. Now,
I just remembered why I said that.
Yes. Why?
Because the young lady asked me, the nursing assistant asked me how tall I was. And
interesting.
Yeah, they asked you to step on a scale, and I never step on a scale. I just tell them what my weight is, because I hate scales. And then she's like, how tall are you? And I said, well, back in the 80s, I was 5'7", but now, because I'm bald, I'm 5'6.5". But personality is about 6'5". So
that's true.
You average it out,
that's true.
Floating in around about 5'11".
So did they order a psychiatry consult when you said I'm not getting on the scale? Normally, that's when I would get the call when I was working consultation liaison psychiatry in the hospital.
Yeah.
They'd be like, we got this guy. He won't get on the scale.
Oh.
And so I'm wondering if you can come by because there's something wrong with him. So really, you don't get on scales?
No, because I'm having some body complex images right now. I've been, I've been eating like a junkie, and I'm
Why?
I don't know, just stress eating.
Stress.
I actually started yesterday eating clean again. So
Ah,
you know what
got
the
it.
best feeling is on
What's that?
on a Sunday when you convince yourself you're starting to eat clean again on a Monday, that
Ah,
you just let yourself go on the Sunday
and let yourself go.
and just eat whatever the hell you want because you're starting on Monday. It's so therefore
Right.
it's the last day.
But is it not odd? Query this. Is
Yes.
it is it not odd for a private investigator who burrows for the truth
Yes.
to avoid the scale? It's like, I don't look, let's not get into the facts, ma'am. Right?
Right.
It's like not Dragnet, that's for sure.
Just yeah, just that's always been one of my biggest struggles my whole life is my image in my physique. So I'm not feeling as confident as I should be, and then I get injured, and I live my whole life calories in versus calories out. So if I'm having a lot of calories that are going out, then
Yeah.
I don't typically mind, certain bad calories going in. But now that I'm injured and I'm not sure when I can start training again, I think I suffered
Yeah.
a week of self-pity and in depression, maybe not the clinical kind of depression, but just the boo-hoo Mark depression. And
But you didn't call me, which is it's odd. It's like people who live in a house with a contractor and like the ceiling has a hole in it. And you're
right.
always like, I wonder. And so here you have your co-host and friend
Yes.
fully equipped to help with your quasi depression, and you're silent.
Putting locks on the cupboard. Is that what I do?
Do you put locks on the cupboard?
No, not at all.
I
But
could see you doing that. But I wonder whether the scale is in any way a metaphor. So here's the thing.
yes.
Here's the way. So we'll take people inside the mind of a psychiatrist while going inside your mind.
All right.
When a psychiatrist hears that someone doesn't want to get on the scale for fear of the number making plain a certain fact, right? You never accept that for what it is. You never say, oh yeah, so he's sensitive about his weight. That's what's going on. It's always a metaphor. And so it would lead someone like me to say, I wonder whether you wrapped everything up. Everything's okay, you said as a young man or a boy. Yeah. If my physique is good and I don't know otherwise, everything's okay. Yeah. But one would wonder what other aspects of your life have not been weighed and measured or were not weighed and measured.
No pun intended.
What's that?
No pun intended.
No pun intended, exactly. But it could be anything. It could be that, a relationship in the distant past certainly was not what it appeared to be. It could be your sexual orientation is not what you've believed it to be. Maybe you're a woman. Anyhow, these are jokes, but the reality is, was there something else that you were loath to truly get the measure of in your early life? Was there?
I don't know, but I will say.
You do know though, but you do know.
Isn't that statement that people have been using for decades and centuries?
Can you keep your shoulders down, for God's sake?
Oh, yeah, okay. God. So that statement with macho guys, people say, stop being a woman. Isn't that one of the most offensive things you can say?
Well, yeah, but it's short. I'm not easily offended.
Neither am I, but
stop being a woman. Yeah, I think it's unfortunate because basically what it's doing is it's telling you don't emote.
Yeah.
Like stop it, just suck it up. Now, I think it's one of the strongest things you can do, by the way, to say what you're feeling. And because then you're not running from it. Anything you can admit and talk about,
Yes.
you're not on the run from.
I'm not on the run from anything. If you listen to violentminds.com,
You are.
you chase me.
You won't get on the scale.
It's a metaphor. Me every fucking episode.
It's a metaphor.
You chase me every episode, so I ain't running. I'm here.
Something was going on in that house in which you grew up, about which you were potentially unaware. You suppressed it.
Sometimes shit. I mean, so you just think that there's an answer to everything.
So, I do,
and there's a reason behind everything.
I do.
And sometimes people really just don't think about reasons behind everything, like myself, and think that maybe it's just in my DNA and it's who I am. So I just have to deal with it and live with it every day.
I don't think the t-shirt is random. Hardest, that's all that's showing. Oh, hardest worker. But that's not what we're showing. Okay. And
right.
So it's
interesting. So you think that's a metaphor because I know it's cut off?
You know, when you do, this is what I'm saying. Don't know. Right. So it's an unconscious thing. But look, you've been looking at it and I've been looking at it. You can see yourself. I see you. And so do our viewers. And they're thinking, what's he trying to say, hardest?
You think people think it's I don't have erectile dysfunction issues? Or do you think people look at it like I'm hard, I'm a tough guy?
Oh, that's interesting. I think that an erudite, elevated perspective would say, here's a guy who's sensitive, who has always said, I'm gonna enter the world based on my physique. You've already said that.
Yeah.
I'm hard, I work out. That's why the torn meniscus is not a torn meniscus for me would be a burden.
It is.
But for a warrior, for a gladiator, a torn meniscus, you may as well tear your heart.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Yeah. I don't mean to make too much of it, but what it allows us to do is to enter, when we have time, perhaps, further into your life story to say, this was not willy-nilly. There was a reason why becoming a warrior, wearing armor made of muscle, seemed necessary to you.
See, what
was the battle?
Why does my wife not see, my beautiful wife, who's a nurse, who cares for people, why does she not understand? Like I cry to her about my knee hurting, wham, but she's never once, and we've been together 8 years now, understood, and she didn't come from this background, understood the whole concept between guys rolling around with guys. Now, do you look at that? Like when I say I practice jujitsu and I'm rolling around with another guy, fully clothed, mind you, doing moves that were originated and invented by the Gracie family in Brazil. Do you look into that deeper than it just being jujitsu, or do you look at it kind of in a homophobic way here?
Well, see, okay, again, to bring you inside the mind of a psychiatrist, I am not the one who raised the question.
Yeah, well, I'm asking you.
I know, but posing the question is important. So if I have someone come to my office and they say, listen, I'm in martial arts, and I've been wondering whether that has anything to do with wanting to get closer to men in another way, I'm like, okay, I can't discount the fact that this fellow, I'm not going to say no, I can't discount the fact that this fellow has raised, no pun intended, raised the issue. And then if he were to say, and I don't get on scales, doc, right? Because I don't want the facts. I'd be like, okay, this guy's conflicted about whether he wants the truth. He comes in, he says, am I somehow trying to get close to guys? It's interesting, this is
my whole life
makes you get on the couch in my office, but far away on the couch.
First of all, one point, and the second point. One point is my whole life growing up, when I was an amateur wrestler, was getting on scales.
Of course you were.
And having to make weight. All right, so I spent a lot of time on scales when I was younger, making weight for competition and
Yeah,
tournaments.
so you don't want to do that, right?
So the second thing is, if I wanted to play Dr. Keith Ablow
On
I
TV.
could, right, I could just sit here and say, and we talked about this before we went on air. I could sit here and I may not be as quick-witted to come up with some of the analogies that you do,
No,
far-fetched analogies.
I don't know about that.
But I could look at that piece of artwork behind you, and I could look at that deeper and deeper, and look at that circle and that hole and those things, and say, you know, why did you get that piece of artwork, Doctor? What does that mean to you? Did something happen to you as a child, Dr. Ablow?
You could.
That made you want to get a piece of artwork that looks like a cock ring.
Well, just to let people in on the joke. So
that's a big one too. Like,
yeah, there you go. So that piece, that spiral item was inside. It's a flywheel, but the inside has been broken out and it's kicking away the structure.
Yes.
So the meaning is,
Doc, what in your life are you kicking?
Oh my God, are you kidding me? I've been so structured in my life. I've been so autopiloted in my life that at times it's as though I did not exist. I was so structured. And so getting out of structure is a big thing for me, but for a lot of people. I mean, I think our lives are really about, the journey is to become oneself. And it takes decades, unless you're very fortunate to like declare yourself I dated a woman whose parents said, you know, we're not paying for violin lessons. That's ridiculous. Nobody brings a violin to a party. You should take piano. And if you're going to do this for a career, we're certainly not going to support it. Moved out at 16 years old. Said, screw it. I'm a violinist. That's very rare.
Yeah.
I wish I had that. I really didn't have that. Although you did a bit, because your dad said, stay with your work as a prison guard.
Yes.
Shut the F up.
Yeah.
Do that. You're lucky. You've got a great civil service job. Just shut up. And you were like, no, I want to try my hand at being an actor.
Yeah.
Right. And you did it.
Yeah. Good. I'm impressed. Good. That was like show number one. Good memory.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I try to, but you know what I remembered, by the way? I have a memory for narrative that matters.
Yeah.
Right. And you told a story that rung very true to me. Like, wow. So your dad said you're being you're crazy. And you were like, no, I'm not crazy. I'm being myself. I don't want to be a prison guard forever.
You know, he was mad at me. And I actually got the sense that, and maybe this is just me being silly, I never asked him. I actually got the sense, me being adopted, that at that moment he was regretful for adopting me, because you know, because I wasn't towing the line, and it wasn't his mentality, and maybe he was looking at it like, you know what, if this was my actual blood, he may think differently. And so where did he come from, and what created this type of you know, child that wants to flee and chase dreams and do all these things, you know? So, you know, that weighed on me a little bit, you know, back then.
That's interesting, right? Well, that's part of the drug, because you had said that the kids in the neighborhood, I don't forget anything, the kids in the neighborhood would once approached you and said, hey, we heard you're adopted. And you're like, yeah, it's no big deal. But on the other hand, it was a quiet deal.
Yeah.
Because you never really forgot it. And then when he expressed disfavor, you felt it register more, like
I let him down.
Does he have buyer's remorse?
You're right, exactly. Like, can I return him? Like, what's the return policy on a human being to Catholic charities?
Right. Well, that's significant. I mean, it's really it's very significant, and it's a good example. You have to be courageous. You have to really be willing to step on the scale of the universe to share that.
We're back to scales again.
Everything with you is a scale. But you know, we
I have another one. I also talk a lot about having the weight of the world on my back with
that's why you do this
disease. Yeah, I'm leaning in so you hear me. So
I know, but we talked about your shoulders being.
yeah. So if I
Yeah.
have the weight of the world on my back because I have a lot of responsibility, maybe that's the reason I just figured it out. I didn't even go to school like you did, and I just figured myself out. That's the reason why I don't step on the scale, because I wear the weight of the world on me. So I don't need to see the actual digital numbers of the weight.
That's interesting. That's interesting well, here's the way I would structure that.
Okay.
I would say that you don't get on the scale because the nurse or the health aide that was saying, get on the scale. You're like, it's not going to tell you my story. I'm 1,000 pounds. Okay.
Right. Yes.
I mean, actually, it would be an amazing thing and a beautiful scene in a television drama or something, because if you said, you don't understand, if I get on that scale, I'm going right through the floor. You don't have the beams in the floor to support what's on my back, honey. Okay. It's going to register 1,100 pounds and you're going to say it's wrong. It's wrong. Let's recalibrate. I'm 1,100 pounds with what I've got on my back.
Yeah. How do you think a 20-year-old nursing assistant who's making barely minimum wage, who just wants to go to work and get the fuck out of there, would take that from a 52-year-old guy like myself?
Well, if she's spiritually connected, she would cry.
She's like, just get on the scale. I want your weight.
There's a scene in, well, now we're really getting deep, but first of all, I said she'd call the psych consult. So there's that.
Yeah.
But if she's really spiritually connected, she'd be moved to tears by the truth, which moves people to tears. But there's this beautiful scene in Round Midnight, which is about a jazz, I think, saxophonist. It's a documentary style movie. There's a moment when he visits the psychiatrist and he's a drinker. And the psychiatrist says, can you give me a sense of what's wrong? What's wrong in your life? Why are you doing this?
Yeah.
And he says to the doctor, he says, there are times when I'm playing my music that I get lost. And when I come back to myself, my lips are bleeding. Can you help me with that?
That's pretty deep.
Wow. Right. Yeah. So that's your moment where you would step on the scale. How many of us, if we got on the scale of life, would have it read 940 pounds and would fantasize, man, wouldn't it be nice if someone said to me, what is this weight made of? What is it? And connect with you. And you could say, you could call home to your wife and say, honey, I'm not coming home. I met this Kimberly girl.
Right.
and she understands me.
She's 20 and she gets me.
She gets me. She knows I'm 1,100 pounds, honey. Right. And I left that office lighter than air.
And she doesn't see me as a person.
Well, by the way, no wonder you would rip your meniscus, because the weight on the meniscus.
Wow. It's that 500-pound gorilla on my back.
It's the 500. You're carrying an awful lot, and it's wearing out your tissues. Oh,
another metaphor.
What's that? Tissues.
Get it?
Yeah.
Wearing out my tissues.
Wearing. Yeah.
Actually, the tissues of life.
The tissue. Well, or crying, or whatever it might be. My sister helped me with that, because I didn't even notice that for years I had no tissues in my office. And she said, I showed her the new building, and she said, where is your tissue box? I said, yeah, I don't have one. She's like, what kind of a psychiatrist has no tissues? It's like telling people don't cry here.
It is sending a message that you need to be tougher than, that's sending a real bad message.
Did I ask to be criticized? I corrected. Of course, I have tissues everywhere now.
Right?
Man, it's amazing. I listen to you and I'm like, look, the weight of the world's on your shoulders. And I tell you one thing I did wrong, and you're like, oh man, you suck. You're no psychiatrist.
now you
So
got
yeah,
tissues
hardest.
everywhere.
You are a tough man, the
Oh,
hardest man.
no, I'm not. All right, we got like 30
Speaking of
minutes
which,
left.
WrestleMania.
Yeah, I want to talk about that because you're going to probably analyze that again. So make sure everyone checks out violentminds.com. Check out the great Dr. Keith Ablow. You can
Mark Chauppetta.
also hit me up as well. And yeah, this weekend was, what's weird is that, being a wrestling fan from my past, I pretty much abandoned the sports entertainment called wrestling, WWF, WWE, which it's called now. Although this year it was, if you have the Paramount app, which I have, it was on there for free. So it wasn't it wasn't on pay-per-view where you have to spend $69.99. So I just, kind of, and they had it replayed. It was a 2-night affair. First time ever. Saturday night, Sunday night, and they were replaying it the next day. So I watched it each morning with a cup of coffee, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was fun to watch this year, and it's definitely different than what you and I watched as kids. It's basically stuntmen and women,
right.
Choreographed and scripted stuntmen and women. And as an adult, I have a hard time suspending reality and believing the characters.
Yep.
But then I look at 78,000 people that were there in Texas in that stadium, grown men and women and cheering. And I'm like, it's actually really a cool thing to see because they are suspending reality. We live in a fucked up world, and for 2.5, 3, 4 hours, they get just to kind of get out of their shit and just have a good time, and whatever they need to use it for. But yeah, it's a violent sport. And there's a dark side to the ring, which is actually a great docuseries if you haven't seen it. Have you seen it?
No.
It's called Dark Side of the Ring. If you look it up and Google it, it was on.
I don't know why that struck me as funny, but you said there's a dark side of the ring, and there's actually a documentary series about that. It's called Dark Side of the Ring.
They've been revealing. It's on year 3, and they've been revealing the violence and the drugs and the sex
in the WWE,
in the sport of wrestling itself.
Professional wrestling.
Wrestling, which is kind of a metaphor and a weird term when you call it professional wrestling when it's not even professional. But it's an interesting docuseries. It really gets into what wrestling has done and what these wrestlers have sacrificed with their bodies, the painkillers, the drugs, the early deaths. And everything that's associated, with the sport, as well as taking it to extremes, hence extreme wrestling that, I never was exposed to as a child, but there's a whole nother area of wrestling fans that watch this brutal, violent, extreme.
Wow.
Have you ever seen it?
I don't think I've seen the extreme stuff. But it is a respite. It is sort of an escape from reality. And it's also in a world in which people are very confused about things like gender. I don't believe that the WWE yet has yielded to such a notion. I still think it's like women are women, men are men. I think.
Well, they were one of the, back to the early days, back to the 40s, maybe in 50s.
Yeah.
You had Gorgeous George, who was a drag queen.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
He was a drag queen?
Yeah, like the boa and the blonde hair and the coming in walk out to the ring. So you did have that. You had Adrian Adonis, who was
interesting,
who also lipstick.
Stand corrected. I stand corrected. Interesting. You know, you're wrestlers.
I do. Yeah, I'm somewhat of an old school wrestling junkie, but they haven't crossed over to the I'm a man and I want to be.
That'll be interesting. I guess in that way, they may be a bit of a mirror of society. I imagine WWE fans would not generally cheer for a man beating up a woman because he says he's a woman. That would be a dramatic display of the transgender thing. But let's get off that topic. But I do think that it brings people into like a comic book. It's almost like, would you like to lose yourself in a comic book tonight? And the answer is yes. And what little boy or girl, but especially boys, isn't thinking about his power and physique and these outsized characters who are iconic and good versus evil, because they're good wrestlers and bad wrestlers, and people getting their comeuppance, right? Because they boast too much, or they deliver when they boast, or whatever it might be. But I think it's it's amazing the extent to which these people will cheer in earnest for one as opposed to another.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. And, the sport, and as an adult, and actually someone that trained as a pro wrestler myself.
I didn't know that.
I did, yes.
You trained as a pro wrestler?
I did.
Wow.
Right. So I've done 4 or 5 charity wrestling shows over the years.
That's great.
For muscular dystrophy. And actually, interesting enough, which I wasn't even aware, someone pointed it out to me on social media, that the one of the big matches now, Stone Cold Steve Austin, who's a famous wrestler.
Yeah.
316. He was from the Attitude Era back in the 90s, which I didn't follow.
Right.
You know who he is just because
you're
breathing. But he had a match against a guy by the name of Kevin Owens, KO, they call him. And I wasn't aware that in 2010, I promoted an indie charity wrestling event for muscular dystrophy, and he was on my show. And now, he was at WrestleMania, which was
very cool.
Which was
what was your
cool.
Stage name or your ring name?
No, I wrestled as myself. So what I did was me being being a hands-on guy and wanting to, and being athletic and being a narcissist and all the other crazy things I've been called in my life, I wanted to do a match. So I spent 4 months here in Massachusetts in a barn that had a ring, training and choreographing.
That's great. It's not easy, right?
No. It was a tag team match. So it was myself, who was a non-wrestler, with a wrestler. And then my opponent was a non-wrestler with a wrestler. So they could kind of carry the match, so to speak. And we were choreographed to do the things that we did. But taking a bump is what they call it. So having a choreographed move. So one of the things I had to do was, my opponent was standing up in the corner in the ropes, and I had to climb up on the ropes and throw my legs over his head, kind of like sitting up on him, fall backwards, and then he would flip over me onto the ring.
Wow.
Now, practicing this, it was scary as all hell, because if you land the wrong way, you can break your neck. There's a number of different things. So that, in contrast to being a retired mixed martial arts fighter, getting hit is getting hit. You get hit and you react. But when you know and you're doing it, it's scarier and harder.
There's almost no drama involving contact with another man, which you will not participate in.
I would have thought, yeah, true. Yeah.
All I can think about is like this move that I practiced for 4 months, putting my legs around a guy's neck. I'm like, okay, in the barn. Geez, did you have a barn growing up?
And there were animals watching.
And there were animals. No, I think it's fascinating. It really is. But
it was violent and it was scary. And
geez.
So we had the match. It was a 10-minute choreographed match. And so what we did was we had a little fun. So me being a former MMA guy, we staged a feud between myself and my trainer.
Yeah.
We staged it on social media, and that he turned on me and he was a heel, and we were going to have a tag team match together to settle the score. And so there was one point in the match where, and he wore his jiu-jitsu gi in his belt. So there was one point in the match where he had me on the ground and he took his belt off and he was going to whip me like 10 times, and the crowd was going to go 1, 2. So I told him, and you talk to each other during the match, you kind of whisper to each other as you go along. And I'm like, make it real. Like, I don't want you holding back. So I had welts on my back afterwards.
Wow.
It's called taking a bump. I was selling it for the crowd.
Right.
But yeah, it was fun. And my kids at the time were little. They were in wheelchairs. They were, and they thought I was the coolest. It's all about just being the coolest dad on the planet. Like my dad.
Correct.
My dad did this, and so yeah. But it's scary and it's hard and it's violent. And this past weekend in the main event match, Brock Lesnar, who is a former NCAA wrestling champion and UFC champion, is now a pro wrestler. He put a move on the guy he was wrestling. I can't even think of his name. He put a Kimura on him. So it's basically a shoulder lock that can dislocate your shoulder. Well, he actually dislocated for real.
Wow.
His shoulder pop out. So I think they whispered to each other, and he's like, we gotta finish this now.
Whoa.
So you really have to protect your opponent, the person you're going with, because you can really risk hurting them.
There's a metaphor there for everything, actually, because, for instance, if you elect a fake president, who's kind of not really the one that was elected, who really might not have all of his abilities, even if they were moderate to begin with. There's hell to pay. You can dislocate your shoulder for real play acting. Right. That's the trouble. If you start casting people in the wrong roles because they're not really supposed to be there, but what difference does it make? A little fiction. Well, you might end up with, say, a country in Europe decimated.
Yeah, you could.
Real.
You can create damage and havoc.
So isn't it beautiful? Like, there's an actor in Ukraine who's really president, and is killing it. I mean, he's the picture of leadership. And we have a guy who's not an actor, who's not really president. It's amazing.
It's
not to get too political.
Interesting segue.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe that may have been clunky, but it's what was happening in my mind. Sometimes I think in my mind, like, the gears are turning, and then like one of the big gears turns, right? Like, it's the little gears and then the big gear. And I'm like, wait, no, this is about Europe and Ukraine, not really the WWE. But every drama is inspired by big themes. And certainly when you talk about heroes and villains, like in the WWE, you're going to see it as a lens to look at the whole world, which is what it is.
Right. It's
Chief J. Strongbow. I never forgot Chief J. Strongbow. Do you remember him?
Yeah, he wasn't really an Indian.
He wasn't really an Indian, but the important thing,
he was Jewish,
is that if you hit him too much, right, you could hit him, but if you hit him too much, he'd go into his war dance and he'd just then slaughter you.
Right. Well, talk about the mentality. Talk about something that was very prevalent in selling a match for decades and decades is now banned, and it's called blading. So, you know what blading is?
No.
So when a wrestler bleeds, it's called blading. So they would conceal a razor blade. Lots of times they keep it under their tongue or in their tights, and they cut their forehead. And they generally would do it maybe 10 or 15 minutes into a match when they work up a sweat, because even just the slightest of cut on your forehead mixed in with the sweat and the heat, it's going to look like it's a million times worse. So they've, so the mentality of self-torture to sell a match and to make it look realistic is crazy. But it's been banned, I know, in the WWE at least, because one of the wrestlers, Eddie Guerrero, might have been the 90s, actually bladed himself too deep and cut an artery.
Whoa. Right.
So what's the mentality between, like someone like Ric Flair, who's been around forever. He's 72 years old. He's still pretty relevant. And he bladed pretty much probably 6 days a week and bled every day. Like why would you want to self-torture yourself? You think there's something deeper in these wrestlers' lives that's making them go into this profession and cut themselves like this? Or were they just being good soldiers for their sport?
I think it's probably, look, I mean, I think if you consider yourself an actor-athlete, it's probably not different than like Russell Crowe, gaining 110 pounds for some role. It's like, okay, that's probably not a good idea. You could have a heart attack. Or, if you're, supposedly the Joker, he killed himself, right? And it wasn't clear, like somehow did descending into this role somehow trigger some kind of a psychiatric event. So I guess, probably blading is the least of it. I think probably spreading hepatitis and stuff, which you could, is not a good idea to the other wrestler because you're bleeding for real. But in terms of what's the real risk of cutting yourself superficially and bleeding, what's the risk to you? Not much. And it doesn't hurt much. And bloodletting, frankly, I'm not recommending that folks watching cut themselves. But like in Salem, Mass, like during the times of the witch trials, not for witches necessarily, but people did that. They did bloodletting as a cure for things. And don't you know, well, now people who donate blood, they're less likely to get certain diseases because their iron reserves are depleted somewhat. And iron, if it's in too much abundance in your body, can lead to all kinds of problems.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to me. But look, I don't think that to me, if someone said, we're going to pay you a lot to be one of the biggest wrestlers on the planet, or you have that possibility, and someone said, look, one of the things we do is we superficially cut, be careful, don't screw it up. I'd be like, all right, well, that's not so terrible. I think jumping off what you did, jumping off into the ring, you can paralyze, God forbid, yourself. It would be that I'd be like, geez, Mark, really? Like, can't you have him slap your face or something?
Right. What's funny is my finishing move was to body slam my opponent. Now he was about 350 pounds. So I had to pick him up and over.
Amazing.
Now there's a way you do it where they help and they jump, but it's still a difficult task. And I could never get him up and over during practice every time I tried.
Wow.
But during the match, the adrenaline was flowing so much.
You did it.
I was able to do it.
Dangerous though. You could slip a disc. A lot of things can happen. Of course. But let me ask you an intimate question.
Sure.
Do you ever bring this into the marriage?
You want me to dim the lights a little bit first?
Dim the light. I could do that. Do you ever bring it into the marriage and kind of go into the bedroom dressed in a certain way, in a robe, perhaps?
Like a cape?
In a robe or a cape?
No.
No?
No.
And you pretend you won the match, and then she's like at the side of the...
No. I think
I'd recommend it. I would recommend that.
I think my wife would be calling you at that point and saying,
no, and she's the nurse, and you say, honey, you're going to be the nurse. Like, I just won the match and I'm bleeding. I'm going to blade myself. you're going to attend to me. And then we look in each other's eyes.
Yeah.
And we kiss.
Right. Well, it's kind of like,
and then in the middle of the ring, the bed is the ring.
right. Yeah. Yeah. Then I suplex her.
I shouldn't have to tell you these things.
So my wife's a nurse, and
I know you keep saying that. I wonder why you keep saying that.
And some people find that sexy, and some people find the whole, like role playing the nurse's outfit.
The nurse's outfit.
Yeah. But my wife takes the nurse's outfit off and puts pajamas on. I'm like, why don't you just come to bed in the nurse's outfit?
And maybe she will she?
I don't know.
Yeah. Well, you could ask her that.
Yes, she's in
school. Because you're thinking about it. I could ask her whether she'll do it for you. She'd think that was really weird.
She's in school right now, and no, I don't.
Oh, she's in school.
Yes, she's furthering her nursing education.
Well, what about a school uniform?
See, that's borderline like pedophilia and weirdness.
True. True.
I'm an old man. I'm going to be 53 in a couple of weeks. So
you're really not an old man. The truth is you're still fixated on various action figures. There's nothing wrong with your wife dressing up like a schoolgirl, because she's not. It's not pedophilia. She's not a schoolgirl. You are in many ways obsessed with the $6 million man, obsessed.
Yes.
Like, listen to if I ever shared the recording with, say, a panel of 99 psychiatrists of this episode, they'd be like, he rattles off things about like the 1970s in wrestling, names, dates, this, that.
I have a funny one for you. Another person.
Speed Racer, Racer X. What?
I love Speed Racer.
I do too.
You know who I'm obsessed with? My wife thinks I'm weird for being obsessed with her. I'm obsessed with this female who seems to be, she's dead. And
yeah, that's weird.
And she's from Cambridge, and
was from,
and she seems to having a resurgence thanks to Boston Casting here in Massachusetts, because there's a TV series that just dropped on her. And there's actually a television show on
well, can we have the name? This is Network. Like way too much background.
It's the anticipation.
She was born in, and shoe size was 8.
I'm giving you clues for you to try to figure
God. What's her name?
Julia Child.
You can't possibly be obsessed with Julia Child.
I am.
Like, in what sense? Not in an erotic way.
No, not in an erotic way. Although she was a very sexual woman. I watched her documentary.
Why do you lead with no? It's interesting. You're like, not in an erotic way, although she was very sexy. I'm like, dude, I get points for that. Like, I want my test recorrected.
Yeah,
I got the answer right. Jesus. Wow. Okay. Yeah.
You know what? And this goes back.
Why are you obsessed with Julia Child? This is like psychotic behavior.
You know what? When I was a child, I was very drawn to her public television show, her cooking show on PBS.
Why?
I don't know. Maybe it was the voice, maybe it was she was very comedic and very funny. And it was just something that I used to enjoy watching her show, sometimes more than I enjoyed watching Mr. Rogers and Sesame Street. So there was just something about her that's always drawn. I always thought she was an intriguing person. And then I watched her documentary recently, and her life story is just insane, and how she started her career later in life. And had this great relationship with her husband, and co-wrote the one of the most famous cookbooks, the French cuisine cookbook there. And I don't know, my wife thinks I'm nuts. I'm like, do you want to watch this, Julia?
I was going to say, don't tell anyone else this story. Of course, we're on a podcast.
Yeah, Julia Child. I can't even talk like that.
Yeah, wow. That's it's interesting that you would be simultaneously enchanted with Julia Child and Lee, what's his name? The $6 Million Man, Lee Majors.
Yeah.
Interesting. I was enchanted. I was enchanted with Audra Barkley.
I loved Audra Barkley.
Oh my God. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Audra Barkley. I'm trying to think who else. The Partridge Girl. Keith Partridge's sister.
Yeah.
What was her name? Something Partridge, but
yeah. That's well, now you do
Susan Day.
Susan
Is it
Day.
Susan?
Yeah,
Yeah, that was a thing way back. Yeah.
Audrey was beautiful.
Audra.
And Audra, she was
Don't mangle her name. She's special to me.
Audra. Yeah. Was she Lee Major's sister on the show on Big Valley?
Oh yeah, on Big Valley. And wasn't she Lisa Evans?
She was Lisa Evans also, yes.
Yeah, she was. I mean, she is Lisa. She was. Right. She was Lisa Evans. That's her name. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember her more from Big Valley.
Now, oh, right.
You know Big Valley?
No, that's what she was on.
Yeah, that's what she was on. Right. That's how I was.
You remember her more from, like, again, I got the right answer.
But she's been on other shows.
You're not correcting my test correctly.
She's been on other shows.
I said Audra Barkley. Wasn't she in Big? That was Big Valley?
That was Big Valley. What about?
I know, but you're like, I remember her more from Big Valley.
What? Meaning, I don't remember from any other television shows.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Well, wasn't she? Okay, she was the first wife of the guy who married Bo Derek. That's also true.
Really, the first wife.
John Derek's first wife was Lisa Evans. Yes. Who he left for Bo Derek, who was in the movie 10.
Yes, and he was much older. He was a movie producer, and
yeah.
Yes.
But it's amazing to me how stingy you are with points for me tonight.
Stingy. You get a lot of points for Miss Barkley.
Like, I remember her from Big Valley. I'm like, dude, I said that like 3 minutes ago. It's like old TV series for 40, Alex. Yeah.
Well, who else? What about like Marsha Brady, or were you more into Mrs. Brady?
Marsha Brady was amazing, of course, right? Yeah, Marsha Brady. You bring back memories for me.
You have a great time with her. She seems like she's lived. I was doing a little research on her recently, and she's lived somewhat of a non-Marsha type life.
Is that right?
Yeah, just I think issues with substance abuse, and she's doing well now. But back they had a little run about a year ago when they were doing something on HDTV. They were fixing up they bought the shell, the exterior shot of the Brady house that you see on the show.
They bought it.
They actually went in and bought it, and then revamped it to look exactly like the Brady house inside that actual house, because that was obviously done on a soundstage at Warner Brothers. But yeah, it was really cool. So I like to Google, and I see these people. I like to see what they've been up to the last 40 years, and
I do. And that's what makes you as young in certain ways as your nursing student wife.
Right? Yeah, she's a 40s, a middle-aged nursing student wife.
Yes, indeed. And so, what else?
Nothing. That's about it. I'm going to.
We tapped out.
I think we're hey, that was pretty slick. Tap out.
Tap out.
Well, right. You can tap out in a wrestling match.
You can. Yes. Is there anyone who has the reputation of just saying, I don't do that? You'll have to kill me.
Well, it's either put me to sleep, knock me out cold, or that.
Right.
That's the extent. We should go into the TD Garden and see a wrestling match.
Yeah, that'd be a professional wrestling match.
Yeah, professional wrestling match.
I think it's great. It brings back great memories, because when I had my talk show, what my son remembers of my syndicated talk show, as much as the talk show or more, is that I lived at that time in an apartment building in New York that had lots of floors, and down in the basement, every apartment had a chain link fenced in area for storage.
Yeah.
And we would do steel cage matches. And he was just like 6 or 7 at the time. And that was the most fun we've had is as much fun as it's equal to the fun we've had the rest of our lives in terms of one event. The steel cage matches were about as great. And he had every DVD of professional wrestlers that you can possibly imagine, because it was iconic. It was like, look, I want to be that strong.
Right. So he's from, he's in his 20s. So he's from that era, probably with like John Cena and Stone Cold Steve Austin.
John Cena from Newbury, Mass.
Newbury, Mass. Yes, yes.
Where I sit in Newburyport. We lived in Newbury while I was married. Yeah.
He's an icon, a legend.
He is. Every Thanksgiving, he's at Angie's restaurant, having dinner for whatever reason, or breakfast, maybe breakfast.
And the new CEO of the heir to be, the man that's taking over for Vince McMahon when he passes away is Triple H.
Oh, really?
Yes, and he's from.
Yeah, he married his daughter, I think, right?
Married his daughter, Hunter Helmsley, I believe is his real name.
That's so cool. I love it.
And he's from right just a little bit over the border from you.
Really?
He's from Southern New Hampshire. Yeah.
Oh, he's from there, but now he lives in Rhode Island. I think they're in Rhode Island.
Are they down in Rhode Island now?
Yeah, I think that's their world headquarters.
He just had to retire because of some heart issues. I read.
That's sad.
The newspaper and I
liked him. He was a decent man as a wrestler. Like, he was a good guy.
Yeah,
he was not a bad guy.
Yeah, he was. I think he might have, again. I didn't watch it a lot then, but I think he also crossed over. What's his name? The Undertaker just retired this weekend after.
Jeez, he was awesome. Crazy. It just goes to show you how much the human imagination can roll with, because you're in that arena or watching on TV, and you're like this sense of ominous foreboding, because they're playing music and a man dressed as an Undertaker's coming out with the black hat.
Right.
And, amazing, crazy.
So here's this guy that barely spoke for 30 years, being dead, playing a dead man. He gets up there on the stage this weekend during the Hall of Fame ceremonies, because he was inducted into the Hall of Fame. And he gave one of the best 30-minute speeches. If you get a chance, just Google it. It's probably on
I
YouTube.
will.
He gave a very powerful, inspiring 30-minute speech, almost like Tony Robbins-esque.
Wow.
Coming from the Undertaker. This big Harley Davidson looking guy who just had everyone eating out of his hands for 30 minutes, and he probably could have done an hour more. Talking about life and the lessons that he learned from his parents and his family and integrity, within the sport and himself and the love for his family. I was drawn.
You're so generous, like with his grading. Yeah, him, you'll give an A+. Me, I can't get 2 points to save my life from you.
Best. You're the best.
All right. Well, I feel jealous, but it's okay.
I've grown fond of you through Zoom.
You too.
If I could virtually hug you, I would.
That, by the way, there's no question that's on the horizon.
We're
going to talk about able to do that.
Hugs. We're going to talk about hugs, maybe on another show.
We'll talk about hugs
and talk about. Let's talk about my parents and your parents and the old school generation when it came to affection and hugs and using words like love and stuff like that. I'm curious your take on that on another podcast.
That sounds great. Let's do that on another podcast.
All right, everyone, you hang on there, Dr. Keith.
All right.
Go check out violentminds.com.
And KeithAblow.com and MarkChauppetta.com
Well, yeah, Mark Chauppetta .online, but it'll be on the
.online. Who owns .com?
the other Mark Chauppetta.
Wow.
All right. On that note, everyone take care. Be good. Hang on, Doc.